One of my favorite tools in Adobe Illustrator is gradients, which are actually shading tools that really bring objects to life with it adds a slight or massive lighting effect. And there are two types of gradients that you can work with. There's the linear gradient and the radial gradient. So we're going to make a little outdoor scene to make this come to life. So let's get out of here and go into Adobe Illustrator. So what I want to do is I'm going to make a little forest scene, and I'm going to make a layer and call it sky. Okay, that's cool. I'll choose a nice sky blue, and there you go. There's my sky, and I'm going to lock that layer. Then I'm going to make a new layer, and I'm going to call this grass. Okay, I'm sure you could do a much better job, but we'll choose this little green here for fill color, and we'll just put some grass in there. Kind of like to give it a bit of a mountain effect. So we have a path right here. I'm going to take the pen tool and add some anchor points here. Uh-oh, that didn't go well. So let's undo that. I've got to hover right over the path. Anchor point there, anchor point there, anchor point there. Get my white arrow tool, drag this anchor point up, drag this anchor point up. Get a little bevel going on that. Okay, so there we go. We've got a little starter here. Lock that layer. Make a new layer, and now I want to make some gradients. To make a gradient, the shading device, I'm going to start out with a linear gradient, and there's already a gradient in the swatch box by default, but there is a gradient panel, so I can go Window Gradient, and this little panel pops open right here. The first thing I'm going to do is make a tree. So in making gradients, the first thing I need to do is apply a gradient to something. So I make an object, choose my gradient, and then once I create an object, choose the gradient, all of a sudden I see this color picker down here. This is a linear gradient going from white to black in a linear fashion, but I want to make a tree, and a tree is going to be light brown on one side, dark brown on the other side. So what I do is I just go into the swatch box. Here's a brown, and I can drag it down there. And here's a dark brown. I drag it down there. And there I have a brand new gradient. It's showing up over here at the bottom of the toolbar. So if I go to New Swatch, I'm going to call this Tree Brown. And there it is in my swatch box. I'm going to have leaves on the tree, and I'm going to have them go from a light green to a dark green. There you go. And I'm going, actually I better make that go to a darker green. Now, what I'm have to do here, I'm going to double click here, go in to the land of greens and get a darker green, a really dark green. Okay, that's in the swatch box. Oops. Actually, that applied it. That'll work. That'll work. Okay, so now, okay, we're ready to start. Almost there. I'm going to delete this. It looks like this grass is a little too dark. So let's make that, about that color. Okay, that'll work. So here we go. Now, I'm not going to use the Bezier pen tool to create the tree. Instead, if I go to the brush tool, and there's a pencil tool underneath the paintbrush tool. And layer 3, I'm going to call that layer tree. So I'm just going to make an ugly tree. And I'm going to give it a fill color of brown, though I'm going to change that. And then I just make a little ugly background for a tree. And I'm just dragging around, and there you go. Okay, now when I get done with that, it comes up with no fill and no stroke. So I'm going to give that my gradient right there. Now, I can manipulate the shading of the gradient by clicking on the gradient tool. And then I get this little bar that shows up. And you can change, you can see as you drag, it changes how the shading is being applied. And you can make this, what you can do is just come in here, and to replace this whole bar where it's located, if you just come down here and drag, it creates a whole new scenario. If you don't like that, you can come in here and start again and drag. And you can drag in any direction that you want. And this little bar in here is going to let me change the spread. Okay. So there you go with that part. I'm going to click to deselect. And for my purposes, I'm going to apply a very thin black stroke around the edge. Okie dokie. So there's my tree. Now I'm going to make some leaves. I'm going to go back to the pencil tool. And it looks like I don't have a green gradient for my leaves. So I'm going to select my gradient tool again, and it looks like, oh, now this will kill you here. This will kill you. You cannot apply a gradient to a stroke. My stroke is in the front, and when I hover over anything, there's the none sign. So I have to bring my gradient to my fill to the front. I have to bring my fill to the front, and then my gradient box comes to life. I deselect the tree, and here is my light green. Here is my dark green. That'll work. And then I'm going to add a new swatch, which I thought I did. Tree, no. I'm going to call this leaf green. Now it's in the swatch box. So now I get the pencil tool, make some little ugly green leaf. And I am going to click my gradient tool maybe there and just drag through to apply the shading. Now I can take my leaves and option drag multiple times. Once I get this, let me lock my tree for now. In the tree layer, I can lock that. Nope, I can't do that. I'm going to have to do something else first before I lock that. Let me Oops. This is why you lock layers. I'm going to lock the grass layer, highlight the leaves, and I'm going to copy those. Edit, copy, and make a new layer and call that leaves. Okay, the leaves, that's selected. So edit, cut, and paste those. Paste in place. They are now in the leaves layer. I can lock the tree layer. And with these 3 leaves selected, before I do that, let's make a few more of those by Alt dragging, Option dragging, and now I can select all of those and just Alt drag, Option drag, and give my tree some leaves. Now I'm going to unlock the tree layer, make a marqueed selection of all of them. That gives me everything, and I'm going to group that by going Object, Group, and I'm going to Shift drag to maintain aspect ratio, and then let's bring these down just a little bit. Then I'm going to Option drag again and again and again and again to make a whole group of trees. These trees might be a little closer to us, so it would be a little bigger. Okay, so there you go. And I don't know, for something quick and ugly, that was pretty cool. Let's make a new layer for our Radial Gradient, and I'm going to call this car. And for my car, nothing is selected. I'm going to lock everything. The car layer is not locked. And I'm going to make an ugly car. Before we do that, let's make a fence. I love to make fences with gradients. So I'm going to get a rectangle and just make a rectangle just like that. And apply my gradient. Do we want a black stroke? It already has one. Deselect, there it is. There is the beginning of my fence, and I'm just going to Option drag one time. And let's move that over with the black arrow tool just a little bit. Option drag again, and Option drag again, and Option drag again. I'm not having luck with the Option drag thing, but select all of those and Option drag, and select all of those and Option drag, and select all of those and then Option drag just a couple of more times. There you go. So we got our fence working. Fence is a little high, but you can see I could have just made the fence just basic brown, but look at the shading. It brings it to life. And I'm going to rename that layer fence. And let's make a new layer. Lock the fence layer. I'll call this layer car. We're going to make a very basic car. Everything is locked up except for the car layer. So I'll start with a rectangle. And then we will put an oval with no stroke on top. It's almost like a little spaceship car. Okay, there we go. So now let's select both of those and group those. Group. So that now they move as one. And all I want to do is make some tires. And to make the tires, that would be a radial gradient. And so I select the circle tool, make my fill black, and to draw a circle, a perfect circle, if I hold the Option key down and the Shift key down at the same time, it draws from the middle of the circle and constrains it perfectly. I'm going to Command Z and do this again. I go to where I want the center of the tire to start, hold the Option key down, Alt key on the Mac, Shift key down, and I drag outward, and that creates my tire. Okay. Then I'm going to make this, I'm going to click away to deselect. Then now I'm going to apply my hubcap. Go back to the circle tool, go to the middle of the object, Option Shift. I'm drawing this from the middle. No, I don't want a red hubcap. So this is where I select my silver gradient, and then here in the gradient panel I select radial. There you go. So then if I select the gradient tool, you can reapply how this is being affected, or you can just drag this little slider around to make this bigger or smaller, or just drag the whole thing around. Now that this is done, I'm going to use my sublayers to lock the car layer down here and get my black arrow tool, select, shift click my wheel, and I go Object Group. So now the tire is all one with the hubcap, and I can select it. And if I hold the Option key down or the Alt key and I start to drag, if I hold the Shift key down at the same time, that lets me drag that and copy it in a straight line. There is your radial gradient. And let's zoom in here. There we go. Zoom in. If I hold, I'm zooming in, but if I hold the space bar down, it gives me the hand tool. Space bar down gives me the hand tool. And for something that we just did in, a little bit of time, I just love gradients. It really brings everything to life.